Hello there, it's Jay here from Jay's Vintage Junk, and today I thought I'd give you all a quick update on LOLA. Now, if you don't remember from a previous video, LOLA is my 1972 Series 3 short wheelbase Land Rover. And I've owned this Land Rover for over 10 years now. It's not been on the road for a couple of years due to various issues, mainly structural, but the engine was getting very, very tired in it, and the gearbox was forever jumping out of second and third gear, and it was basically getting to the end of its life. So I pulled it off the road about four or 5 years ago, and I've been collecting various bits and bobs to finally get it back into a roadworthy condition so I can actually use it. So like I say, in the last video I think you saw it still had its engine in and everything. If I show you now, it's in quite a bit of a state at the moment. As you can see, we have no engine in. We have no wings on it, no front panel on it, and I have been busy welding. I've replaced that footwell on that side. I'll take you over there actually. And last week I put a new footwell on this side, so that's all welded in and nice and solid. In fact, today I've just bolted the steering box back up and made sure it all lines up nicely, which it does. All this front section here is actually remarkably solid. There really isn't any rust or major, well, there's light surface rust, but that's it. Because the engine leaked that much oil, it's actually preserved the front of the Land Rover quite well. There really isn't that much rust or rot to speak of anyway. The footwells are one of the Achilles heel on the old Land Rovers, as they always rot out, but replacement parts for them are only about 18 quid. It's about 18 quid for this section here, and you just cut it out and weld it in. You can see where I've welded it round here. My welds aren't the neatest of welds, but I can assure you they are very, very strong. It's all welded in round there. It's probably had 3 or 4 footwells in it in the past, judging by the excess metal that I had to cut out. And you can see I've welded it down there, and I'll show you on the inside. You can see that I did that one. I think it was late last year. Literally a few days ago I did that one on that side. I also replaced that outrigger there because that had started to rot. Again, it gets mud thrown up by the tyre, and it traps it, and where the floor plate is there, it traps it, and it had all rotted out on the top there, the old one. So I cut that off, put a new one on, and the same at the back here, that outrigger there, that had all rotted away, and when I actually cut it off, it had actually rotted all the chassis rail out behind it, so I had to put a plate on it, through and round there, and then weld the new outrigger on. So really the front of the Land Rover up to the tub there is now sorted. This is sound. I'm just actually at the moment, I'm in the process of just having a scrape down with some with an angle grinder and a wire wheel and what have you. And I'll finish off red leading it, and then I can put some chassis black on this and make it look as good, well, nearly as good as new. It'll never look as good as new because it is a 47-year-old chassis. It is the original chassis to the Land Rover, so it's got some years. It's had many repairs in the past, and I'm sure it'll have a few more before I can save up enough money to buy it a nice new galvanised chassis. That is what I will do eventually, but like I said, for the time being, it's just going to get some more patches put on it and welded back up. And at the moment I've just turned my attention round to the back here. Ooh, let's get in here and I can show you. So you can see that's the new outrigger that I've welded on. And that's where the shock mount is. I've just been cleaning up, basically cleaning all the corrosion off around here and making sure I've got good solid metal, which I have. That's a patch that I put in quite a few years ago, which is still holding up well. There should be a check strap on here to hold the axle, and they're not needed really. They just restrict axle travel, so I usually remove them from Land Rovers. And this one had held mud behind it, and again it had rotted out the chassis there. So I cut it all out and welded a patch in. What I am going to have to do though, this is where the rot really starts on this one. As we can see, the entire rear cross member is completely gone, and I've repaired this cross member umpteen times. these actual end bits of the, let me show you, these end bits of the cross member here are actually off this cross member. It had completely rotted out at one point here, and this was just like tissue paper, and someone was removing a cross member that the centre section had failed on, but the outside sections were actually still sound, so I actually cut them off another cross member and grafted them onto this one quite a few years ago. But as you can see, these have now gone completely, and it's all gone there. So I've got a complete new, it's what's called a quarter chassis. It basically, it starts around here, so the whole of the chassis is going to get cut off there, and I'll weld a whole new rear quarter chassis on with the hanger and everything, and that'll make it good again for quite a few more years. But it's coming on quite well. Now we've got nice sunny weather, I feel more inclined to actually get out and do some mechanical work rather than electronics work in the workshop. It's nice to get out here and have a play with this thing again. There's bits of Land Rover all over the front of the garden actually. That's the old engine there. That's an old 2¼ litre petrol engine. That's what I've pulled out, and I said it burns quite a lot of oil. It could be repaired easily enough. It's just the oil stem seals have gone on it, so it gets oil into the cylinders. It's got good compression and everything on it. It's the whole 5 bearing engine. It's one of the slightly better Land Rover engines, but even so, I've got something slightly better to go in it. I'll show you that. It's buried in here in my garage, behind my engine crane and the doors and everything. You can spot that down there. That is a turbo diesel engine. It's a 200 TDI out of an old Land Rover Discovery, and it's out of my old Land Rover Discovery, so I know the engine off by heart. I had that Land Rover he had 59,000 miles on it when I bought it, and that engine's only now got 120,000 miles on the clock, so it's really is a very good engine. So that's what's going to be going in there. And if we have a look up here, we also have a replacement gearbox. Now I could have rebuilt the old gearbox, but I got a bit of a bargain there. That is actually it's never been used. It's a Steve Parker reconditioned gearbox, which I bought off a local that's to me, who had started a rebuild on a Land Rover and gave up on it, but he'd already bought that gearbox, so I bought it off him for £80, which is an absolute steal for a recon gearbox for a Land Rover. So that's going to be going in, and my old gearbox is just slightly forlornly just dumped in the front yard like that. I do have to pinch a couple of little bits off that gearbox, because the gearbox I'm replacing is a slightly earlier one. It's for a Series 2A, which means that I won't have synchromesh on first and second gears, which will be a bit nostalgic for me, because when I was 18, the first Land Rover I ever had, my first car, that was a Series 2A, and I had to learn to double declutch just to be able to change gears in it. So I'll be back to doing that, but it's a much stronger gearbox than the very early Series 3 gearboxes weren't very strong. They were renowned for failing pretty early on in their lives. As where the last of the Series 2A gearboxes, before they went synchromesh, are pretty much indestructible. It's what people shove in if they put a V8 engine in their Land Rover. So that's why I'm going for that other Series 2A reconditioned gearbox that we've got up there. So we've got my engine crane all ready to go there to hoist the new engine and gearbox in. And yeah, that's really where I'm about at with it. Like I said, it's a fun project, and it'll be really good when I've got it going. So I'm itching to get this thing back on the road, and it means once I've got that back on the road, I can actually I can get my little sports car out, because at the moment I can't actually see where my gates are. I can't actually use this at the moment because it's completely hemmed in, it's completely blocked in by the Land Rover. So like I said, once the Land Rover's back on the road, I'll do a little bit of work on the scimitar here, and I'll have that on the road as well, because that is a really cool, fun little car. Anyway, I thought I'd give you a little update on the old Land Rover and see how I'm doing with it. So I'm going to leave it there for now. normal normal videos will resume very shortly. So if this isn't your thing, like I said, there will be more computing and vintage electronics videos coming soon. But so long, thanks for watching, and goodbye.